Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Hope you guys all got a chance to, over the weekend, check out the couple of episodes that came out on Rocky's channel and on the audio only Comic Source feed, where we finally got around to talking about the last two issues of both Clear from Scott Snyder and Francis Manapul, as well as Night of the Ghoul from Scott Snyder and Francesco Francavilla. So we really enjoyed those, and part of what spurred us to finally get off our butts and get those out there to you is that there's a big wave of Best Jacket titles coming again as this is being released. So today, Tuesday, if you're listening as this is being released, the next wave on ComiXology of Best Jacket originals are coming out with Barnstormers, Scott Snyder and Tula Lotay. We have Dudley Datson and the Forever Machine, Scott Snyder and Jamal Ingle is the penciler. And then finally, Canary from Scott Snyder and Dan Panosian. So we've got those three to talk about. And also from IDW, we have Dark Spaces Wildfire. Now, Dark Spaces, it's kind of an anthology imprint, this creator-owned imprint that Scott's going to be releasing content under over at IDW. So you see Dark Spaces Wildfire, but you'll also see Dark Spaces and, another subtitle of other stuff. But the cool thing is, it's not just Scott. There's going to be other creators that Scott's going to be. I don't know if he's exactly mentoring or choosing them or how exactly it's working, but he is involved. Kind of maybe as editorial, maybe giving advice, or as I said, mentoring. But we're going to get other titles, other properties under the Dark Spaces imprint. Well, the first one is from Scott and artist Hayden Sherman, who we've covered plenty of stuff that he's done before on the show. And so this first one is Wildfire, which is about a firefighting crew. Maybe you're not aware of this. I'm very much aware of it because my father worked for the Department of Corrections in California. A lot of times fighting those wildfires in California, they use people that are incarcerated in the California penal system. So, and we'll get into some details or whatever. And that being said, good time to tell you all, we're spotlighting these books. We're not going to go, page by page and do like a huge recap, but there are spoilers. Like if you haven't had a chance to read these and you're planning on reading them and you don't want anything spoiled, go and check them out first and then come back and listen to the content. So again, we're going to cover the three ComiXology books that come out on Tuesday, July 19th, and then the Dark Spaces Wildfire that comes out on the 20th. So I was really impressed with these. Rocky and I have talked a lot about Scott being at his best when he's doing this creator-owned stuff. There aren't the rules that there are with licensed properties, writing Batman or Superman. And, those rules exist for a reason and very valid reasons, and I don't begrudge the rules. But when there are no rules or Scott's making the rules and then can break his own rules if he wants, I mean, it's a freedom to tell a better story at the end of the day. So I thought every one of these was great. Some I liked more than others, obviously.
Oh,
More
it's
of my
just
taste.
I
But
agree. I mean, and completely different settings. We got the 1920s. We kind of got the latter part, post Civil War America. We got sort of like a modern day sort of inventor of Dudley Datson, and then we got the wild forest fire fighting in the forestry of California in present day. I mean, just such an eclectic blend of stories, and all from the one mind of Scott Snyder. And he does an amazing job choosing the right artist for each of these stories as well. And it isn't going to be a complete love fest here. We can be, there are some criticisms here, but I mean, for the most part here, I'm enjoying this. As I said to you, this is such a refreshing change. We live in a day and age, or in this particular era of comic books, things are cyclical, but I find myself moving more and more away in terms of the big two, in terms of the stories that I really find compelling. I'm still enjoying the DC. We review DC for your Comic Source podcast and on my channel and what have you. But this is the type of indie work, the type of passionate creations that I love to, that we love to read about. This is what comic books are all about. And it's great that Scott Snyder isn't just writing this, but he also has, he's also going to have some projects coming out where some of the students that he's actually teaching through his monthly Substack, they're going to have opportunities. So his own students are going to be publishing their materials as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what Scott Snyder and his inaugural class sort of bring to the table in the future.
Yeah, and the other part, kind of with the diversity of these stories, because yeah, you're right, Rocky. Every one of these stories is wildly different in setting and tone, and what they're trying to do. At least that's how it feels in these first issues. The other part is, working with these fantastically talented artists for very distinct styles. And Scott has himself talked about how one of the things he loves about these ComiXology originals is how they're all coming out digitally to begin with, but then when they do come out in print later on from Dark Horse, being able to play with the format, right? Like they're not all going to come out like We Have Demons is the only ComiXology original that's come out. My understanding is we're going to get Clear and Night of the Ghoul out in print, at least beginning to be out in print before the end of the year. But they may not all come out in that same format. We Have Demons came out very much in the traditional printed comic book format, monthly release, variant covers, what have you. I could see something like Barnstormers being a very nice, like oversized hardcover, or maybe even going the landscape orientation rather than the portrait orientation, where it's wider than it is tall. I think that would be fantastic. And I find myself as I'm reading these books thinking about, I wonder what the best way to present this would be. So that's another aspect of it. You're still going to get these, even if you're not into digital comics and you want to wait for the print. Again, that's fine, but we are going to get into a little bit of the detail of the story. So we'll kick it off with the book that's coming out Wednesday. Again, Dark Spaces Wildfire. It's from IDW. I do want to apologize for whatever reason. The digital preview copy we got from IDW doesn't have a credits page. So as I mentioned, it is written by Scott. Obviously, Hayden Sherman is the artist. I don't know, and Hayden typically does his own colors, so I'm not 100% on that, but I think this is probably Hayden coloring his own line work, but I don't know who the letterer is. So I apologize for that. But the basic story, as I mentioned earlier, wildfires raging in California. And I find this so interesting that Scott chooses that for a setting. He's an East Coast guy, grew up in New York City, lives in a little upstate New York now, a little north of the city. I grew up in California, so very familiar with the wildfires. And, we know climate change, whether you believe it or not, it is a thing where, and Scott mentions this, it's one of the lines that stood out to me in the narrative. Talks about how, it used to be a bad fire season every 3 or 4 years in California. And that's kind of how it was when I was growing up. And then it got to be every other year. And then it got to be every year. And it was always fire season, right? When it was the dry time during the summer. Because California is not one of those places where, like Florida, let's say, or even here where I'm at in Arizona, where you get a lot of precipitation even in the summer. That's just not how it is. Mm-hmm. California, it used to be, it rained during the wintertime, but summer was always dry. Now it doesn't even rain during the wintertime, but that's neither here nor there. But my point being, the line was, fire season now went from, every 3 or 4 years to every other year to every year to now fire season lasts 13 months a year. Obviously the connotation there is it's just, there's never enough moisture. There's always these big fires. And so this tells the story of a crew of firefighters. They're overseen by a CO, a correctional officer, and they're in the hills of California fighting these fires. There's 4 inmates. They each have a specific job to do on the fire line, and they're overseen by this, the CO, Ma is what they call her. And it's clear that she's been through some bad stuff in her life. Maybe she's lost a daughter, it seems like, based on kind of the context and some of the visuals that we see. It's really interesting. She's kind of narrating it for us in a way. And I don't want to spoil. We get a kind of a glimpse of the future right at the beginning, and then we go back, and then at the end we're reminded, hey, that glimpse of the future, it does tie back into who these people are. Now, what this does by having Ma, this correctional officer, narrate it for us, is it gives us a POV character, first of all, and second of all, it allows us to be introduced to these other prisoners. And one of the things I love that Scott immediately addressed through the words of Ma, through what she's saying, is, your first question is going to be, well, what did these 4 women do to be incarcerated, right? And I love it. Her response is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they did, because when you get out there on the fire line and you're putting your life on the line and you're trying to protect property and lives, it doesn't matter what came before. It's a new beginning. So I really appreciated that. Again, I do have some context. I have friends who were firefighters that fought wildfires in California that I went to high school with and whatnot. My brother's a firefighter. So a lot of what was being said here kind of rang true for me. And actually one of my, he actually was brother of an ex-girlfriend of mine. He was a smoke jumper So he definitely fought. If you're not familiar with that, is they're the ones that get parachuted into the fire, into the fires where they're really in backcountry and you can't get to them, by roads or whatever. And they would
That's a
parachute in. That's
crazy
like
job. Sounds like an
yeah,
insane job.
yeah. He loved it. And I had like the utmost respect for that guy because it's a really dangerous job too.
Yeah.
They are paid they are paid pretty well, but it takes a certain kind of crazy to jump out of a plane into a wildfire where there's no backup. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. These fires can move pretty quickly.
Well, I got to tell you, it's crazy that unlike you, I've got absolutely no experience. I got no friends that are firefighters or what have you. This is completely new to me. I was surprised. I can't believe they would take people in from jail and throw them on the front lines of forest fires. That blows me away. And that was shocking to me. And so for me, not having your, background, I thought this was a pretty good idea for a story. I really like this. The basic premise of this story: we get these 4 women. They're all basically prisoners, and they gotta build some brotherhood or sisterhood, and they have their they form bonds that they need to in order to stay alive, fighting these crazy forest fires. And my only experience is what I see on TV, and it looks insane. And I know it's getting worse and worse because everyone's talking about climate change. And so when I come into this story, and then and again, we're not giving too much away when we say that this is basically kind of like a robbery that takes place they're protecting billionaire homes in California, and they're going to rob one of them under the cover of a huge forest fire. That's a pretty awesome premise for a story. And there's more to it, of course, because Scott Snyder being who he is, there's going to be some misdirection and some other shenanigans going on. So I was right off the bat, I was hooked by the end of this comic.
Yeah, I didn't realize that at first. Like when it first got announced, and it was these firefighters that are fighting wildfires, I thought, okay, well, that's a good idea for a story. I didn't know that it was the aspect, which is totally a thing, like I said, where they take prisoners and they train, and it's very hard. There was a really good article, I think it was in like Vanity Fair or it might have been the New Yorker a few years ago, and it talked about these, especially the women that go and do this and how much they kind of sacrifice. And yeah, they are getting something back. They're not behind bars per se, they're out with a little more freedom, but they're out there risking their lives, and they literally are paid like, a couple dollars a day or something ridiculous.
What, $2 a day in the comic here?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. And that's about right. And the other aspect of it is the fact that they train so hard, and then a lot of them, they get out, they serve their time, they've paid their debt to society, and they get released, and then they can't even find a job, and they need firefighters. They're shorthanded on fire, but they won't hire them to fight these. The state of California won't hire them to fight the fires because of their criminal records. Like, so wait a second, when they're incarcerated, they're good enough, they're risking their lives, they're sacrificing. But then when they're actually released, when it would be of the most benefit to them, right, to be, to get back on their feet and have a sense of purpose and a sense of worth, then you turn them down. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. But yeah, this is a great premise. It's a great start. Intrigued, 4 very different individuals. And anybody's been on a sports team, when you kind of go through adversity together, it really kind of bonds you. Well, imagine that times 10, because these people are out there in a life and death situation, which is a lot more heightened tension than some kind of a sporting event or what have you, sporting contest. The last thing that I'll mention is the Hayden Sherman art. This may be my favorite I've ever seen Hayden's art. It's not quite as sketchy. It's a little cleaner than I've seen his art in the past. And again, if he is doing his own colors, he's doing a fantastic job, because they're colors that you wouldn't necessarily expect. Some pinks and some purples, along with the yellows and oranges that you would think, okay, if you're reading a story about firefighters, you're going to see a lot of red and orange. But there's other tones that he brings in, especially these pinks and blues and purples, that really help the story pop off the page. I also thought he did a great job laying out the panels. There's one particular page where the panels could go out like concentric circles. I thought that was a really cool design choice. So yeah, I was really impressed. It's a very well put together comic in terms of how it's technically made. And yeah, Scott's narrative, I mean, I'm always a sucker for heist story. Like I love heist stories, and now when you mash it up with something else, we have the kaiju score from Aftershock, which is giant monsters mashed up with heist, and now we're getting fighting wildfires in the forest with some kind of heist to a guy that sounds like he deserves to be ripped off. To be honest with you, well, I won't say any more than that. I don't want to spoil it too much, but yeah, very impressed with this. Can't wait for the next issue.
Yeah, I agree. And just one other note is one of the things that Scott Snyder does, which I can say, which doesn't give anything away, is that I believe he incorporates a lot of the language that the firefighters use, because there's he starts off by saying, or that they're we don't really sure not really sure who the narrator is, but it's the narrator is someone who we are told is going to have something to do with how this ends. But the
Yeah,
main
I think
character.
I took it as the narrator is the correction officer, the CO, but
Oh,
I could be mistaken there.
yeah, yeah, no, yeah, I wasn't really sure. That makes sense. I don't want to. At the end, it gives a clue as to who the narrator might be. It involves dealing with the ultimate fates of the firefighters. But well, I like that we get the 5 stages of the fire, of what a fire goes through. And one of them is the trap. And Ma, the lead firefighter, she's really good at spotting the traps. In other words, she sees the warning, she knows what to look out for, and those words are good metaphors for the progression of the story. That should we rob this place? Shouldn't we? The decision whether or not to do so. It's like as they're moving toward their ultimate fate, which is this robbery in the midst of this great fire, which the subsequent issues are going to give us more details about. It's almost like we're going through the stages of a fire, and so it's the robbery again. It's a perfect metaphor for the story itself, and so it works really well, and it sets everything up, and as the reader, it really right away it sets the tone. And you mentioned the art. I thought the art was great. Hayden Sherman's art was really fantastic. My favorite image was, there's one where Ma's life is monotonous. Every single day of her life is the same thing. When she's basically in jail, she's a firefighter, but there's a monotony to it. And there's a great page which shows the monotony of it. And the biggest thing that stands out is the memory of her daughter. And we're not sure if her daughter died or if her daughter is somewhere else being cared for. We're not really sure. But as the relentlessness of her life and the hopelessness of it, in terms of just all she has is fighting fire. And we again, the mystery of, we don't know much about all these firefighters. We know a little bit about them. And we know just enough to get us to want to buy the next issue for sure. So, high praise to Snyder.
Yeah, and I do love that Scott did touch on it. I imagine it'll come up a little more. Kind of, these women, they're all incarcerated except for Ma. Ma is the correctional officer that's in charge of the crew, but the other 4 are all prisoners. They're all incarcerated, and they're talking amongst themselves. And really, there's a little bit of context of the social injustice of it all. And I'm not saying that, because again, we don't know exactly what these women did, but we all know that people that come from poorer backgrounds, where their families are poor, and they might struggle. They come from poorer neighborhoods, or what have you. It's like, what are you supposed to do? You're sort of trapped. Yeah, maybe you're selling drugs, but maybe you didn't have any other opportunity. Maybe the school districts there aren't as good. They're overworked, and you see the poverty and the crime all around you. It's much easier to fall into that life. So you can't put everything on the people. Sometimes it's circumstances, right? So that is touched on, societal circumstances, personal responsibility, like all that stuff is going to be wrapped up in the story, it seems like. So all right, well, let's move on to the first book. And again, this is coming out Wednesday, everybody, July 20th, Dark Spaces Wildfire. So let's move on to the first of the digital releases that comes out today as we're releasing this, July 19th on ComiXology. It's Barnstormers. It's from writer Scott Snyder, as we said. The art is by Tula Lotay. Colors are by D. Cunniffe. Letters by Richard Starkings. I love this. There's a little paragraph right in the first page, and it gives a definition of barnstorming. I think probably a lot of us have heard the term. A form of entertainment popular for a brief period in the 1920s, wherein wayward pilots would impress spectators with dangerous feats of daring. So, this isn't so long, the 1920s, so long after the airplane was, invented. And these Barnstormers, they would do crazy stuff. A lot of the people they were performing for had never seen airplanes, so they would fly into town, fly over the town, do all these crazy barrel rolls and loop de loops and whatnot, and then land and hope that the people were entertained enough that they'd give them $1 or $2. That doesn't sound like very much money to us, but back in the 1920s, that was maybe the equivalent of $20-$30 now. So you're sort of living on tips, as it were, for how you could entertain. And so that's the background of this story. And we meet this guy who calls himself Hawk, and he says that he's an ace pilot and whatnot, and he's flying around. We get to see a map of his journey that he's had so far, and he's literally marking on the map little X's where he's been and how much money he's made. And some of the places he's not making very much. One place only 90 cents. And one thing I have to think about, and you have to think about the time period that it's set in. Like, you would think, like, nowadays making that little bit of money wouldn't have enough for like gas or fuel, but fuel was a lot cheaper back then, right? I mean, automobiles, 1920s, automobiles were kind of a new thing. So obviously fuel and whatnot was, much cheaper back then. And, there wasn't the FAA and all these regulations on where you could fly and that sort of thing. So it's very much a more innocent time and sort of a time of more freedom, but also in a way that also means freedom for people to do bad things. Like, you could get away with stuff a lot more. There wasn't law enforcement oversight, that kind of thing. So, so in the story, we are following this guy who calls himself Hawk, whose real name is Bix. And, it's sort of in the southeastern United States where a lot of this took place. And he flies over what he thinks is a bunch of people that are gathered there, because what he does, the guy that trained him said the best way you can kind of drum up business for yourself is you make friends with the operators. Because remember, everything was manual at this time. Phone lines were something that were really new. So in that time, if you can make friends with the operator, and they were invariably women back there, and you can get one of the operators to call some of the operators from the next town over that you're about to go to and let them know, kind of like almost like a what's the word I'm searching for? Like somebody to drum, like a PR, like a press person or publicist, and there will be a crowd. So when you fly over the town and you're doing your tricks, the more people that are there, the more opportunity the pilot's going to have to make some money. So that's what he's trying to do. But when he flies over to Barnesville and he sees a big gathering, he assumes it's because of the groundwork he laid previously, but it comes to find out it's this woman's wedding. And while he's in the midst of doing his tricks, and he flies a little too low and snags a wheel on the ground, and it kind of ruins the wedding reception, crashes into the tables and whatnot. And apparently this family is very influential and very rich, and they don't take too kindly to Bix crashing the party, and they kind of beat him up and lock him up in the garage. When Bix comes to early the next morning, kind of before the sun's up, he's thinking, how am I going to get out of this? He realizes that they didn't lock the handcuffs. So he runs out to his plane to take off, and lo and behold, there's the bride that just got married the day before that said, I'm the one that unlocked your handcuffs. We're leaving, and you're taking me with you. And he's like, no, I'm not. What are you talking about? I'm not about to go with you. And then his hand is kind of forced because all the other gentlemen in the house, in the family, have woken up. They see that Bix is not in the garage. They've got their dogs out, and they're going to go out hunting them. So he's going to have to take off. And apparently he's taken this girl who just got married, Tilly, with him. So that's basically what happens. Like I said, a bit of setup. I love the more innocent time of the 1920s, the setting, but yet we're told that this is a murder mystery in a lot of ways. And
it's a ballad of love and murder. It's right in the title.
Yeah, exactly. So, just because it's set in this more innocent time, and Tula Lotay does an incredible job with the art to really evoke both a feeling of innocence as well as kind of an old kind of fashion, and obviously the aesthetic with, the old cars and the old architecture and buildings and biplane and whatnot. But beyond that, the colors that are in here from D. Cuniff do a really good job too. It's not like sepia tone, but there is almost like a bit of a filter that you really feel like, you're being thrown back in time. So I absolutely loved it. What did you think, Rocky?
Well, first of all, for all fans of James Dean, Rebel Without a Cause, fans
There
of
you
The
go.
Rocketeer, pick this up. This I even got some Dave Stevens vibes on the art from Tula Lotay, even though their artistic styles are different. She actually is. I actually I love this. There's a sexiness here. There is a full page spread of this beautiful bride, Tilly. She's wearing cowboy boots, a sexy lower cut, just by the knees, wedding dress with a sort of pearl flowery necklace wrapped around her forehead. She looks absolutely gorgeous. She's sitting on this biplane, waiting for Hawk as he wakes up, and he's running toward his plane to escape because he was knocked out by a very angry groom, and he just wants to get the hell out of there. And she's blocking his way, and she's got a shotgun, and she's saying, "You're taking me with you." So this is a bride that wants to escape her wedding. So Hawk is overwhelmed. He's saying, like, what the hell have I gotten myself into here? And so this is just plain a lot of fun. But there's a wild card. And the wild card here is that Hawk has these flashbacks and these hallucinations that in 2 or 3 spots throughout the narrative where he imagines this robotic creature that he calls Mr. Baby. And this takes place in the setting of this takes place in southern northeastern United States. This is 1927. So they don't have robots there, but he's got these visions of robots of robotic creatures that he's had before, and he imagines seeing. And so that's the wild card aspect of this. So on the surface, this is just a guy that wants to make a living, flying his biplane, making some money on the side, flying from town to town, utilizing an operator system, sort of wooing and probably sleeping with various operators, just flying from town to town, happy-go-lucky guy, James Dean rebel type. Yet he, as he says to Tilly, "I'm a bad guy. You don't understand. I'm kind of a bad guy." And Tilly says to him, "You promise?" There's sexiness in here, and there's suggestive things going on. And anyways, it's sexy, it's fun, it's adventurous. This is, in my heart, this is one of my favorite of the groups that we're going to be reviewing today. So again, high praise there. I would give this out of 10. I would give this a solid 9.5 just because I love the art, Tula Lotay, and I just love that Dave Stevens feel, the Rocketeer feel. Everything about this, I just puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, I agree. It was fantastic. And I can't help but wonder, so what's Tilly's deal? Was it an arranged marriage? Was she forced into the marriage? She sees this as a way to escape. Is she a con artist and, was only marrying the guy for, his money? Or, you got to wonder what her deal is that she wants to get away so badly. So, all right, well, let's move on to the next book that we're going to talk about. As I said, excuse me, Dudley Datson and the Forever Machine is a collaboration along with Jamal Ingle. He's the pencil. So let me go ahead and give the creative team, which is there is a credits page. I'm just waiting for it to load here, and thought the credits page was really, really cool looking because it's the credits are laid out circular around this this kind of symbol of Dudley Datson, which is sort of this circle that's been cut in half and sort of offset. Written by Scott Snyder, pencils by Jamal Ingle, inks are by Juan Castro, colors are by Chris Sotomayor, and letters by Tom Napolitano. So we don't get a specific year in this one, but it does seem to be pretty modern times. But we are told about inventors through history who are pretty famously known. Like Albert Einstein's one, Alexander Graham Bell, and Leonardo da Vinci. And they all have had pets through time, and we're not sure exactly who's narrating here, but then we're introduced to Dudley Datson, who is on stage apparently at a presentation for this academy he goes to that's for science-minded individuals, young persons, because I think he's right around 18, and basically his invention kind of malfunctioned, and their clothes that are supposed to be able to transform their look and appearance, but right before he went on stage, he accidentally damaged it without realizing it. And so right as he walks on stage, they go transparent. So he basically walks out there in his underwear. So we're not exactly, as I said, sure who's narrating here, but from that start of seeing Dudley in his underwear, we see Dudley and his father, get some context. We find out that his dad is sick. They live in New York City. Not exactly sure how he's sick or what exactly he's dealing with. His mom isn't around anymore. Get the sense that she passed away. And Dudley's kind of struggling with, should he be pursuing his dreams or should he be there for his father, who is getting older and frail, and he's very much worried about his father and whatever this affliction he has is. And then we skip to an interlude where we see some figure in a red hooded cloak, and they're talking about wanting to retrieve this watch at all costs and how they've been waiting 5,000 years to retrieve it. And clearly these are the bad guys, as it were. And so what happens is Dudley's father was planning on going to the presentation, but had a spell, had something happen with his affliction where he couldn't make it. And, Dudley, even though his father was able to watch it virtually on Zoom, he says, and got a big kick out of seeing Dudley there in his underwear. Dudley's, worried, and he thinks about quitting, or at least taking a sabbatical from the Institute, because he needs to take care of his father. And so he goes to the Institute late at night to try to figure out what went wrong. And while he's there, he hears the head of the Institute call out, and goes running over, wearing his clothes, the ones that can turn him invisible and look, change their appearance and whatnot, and finds the head of the Institute, who's been a mentor to him, Dr. Shea, wearing like this battle suit, but in very poor shape. And she gives Dudley a watch, and watch was mentioned by those bad guys previously, and says, keep this away from the needle's eye. Whatever you do, don't let them get it. And kind of passes away, is what it seems like. And Dudley's thinking, well, what do I do now? And all of a sudden, Dr. Shea's dog, who had always barked at Dudley, and none of the other students, but always barked at Dudley and never seemed to like him, literally talks to him and says, "We run, Dudley, we run for our lives." So obviously Dudley's shocked. This dog that never seemed to like him.
Daedalus is the name of the dog.
Yeah. I think it's pronounced Daedalus.
Oh, Daedalus. Right, sorry.
Yeah. Which I think was, I think it's the name of both an ancient god, either Roman or Greek, and also the name of some different space programs in the United States at one point. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, he's like, "We run for our lives, Dudley." So Dudley's like, wait, what's going on? Why is this dog talking to me? And we find out on the final page that the person, I use that term loosely, that's narrating is actually this dog, Daedalus, he's the narrator. So I'm completely hooked. I have no idea what the heck's going on. I thought the Jamal Ingle art was really clean and fun. The colors by Chris Sotomayor are very bright, which gives it that sort of classic comic book feel, Silver Agey feel. So I'm interested. Like, what is the watch? Does it have to do with time travel? Who are these bad guys? The Needle's Eye. What's the deal with with this talking dog? What exactly is the Forever Machine? Is the Forever Machine the watch? Like, a lot of questions, more questions than answers, but a really intriguing start. And Dudley comes across as a very likable character, right from the start. So while I don't think this is particularly aimed at younger readers, I think it's all. That being said, it's also very new reader friendly. Like, there's no like themes in here that are, more adult or anything. I think, if you're looking for something to share with, younger reader in your life, this could be right up their alley. I mean, who doesn't love talking dogs? Of course, kids love talking animals of all kinds. So yeah, I thought it was fantastic. What do you think, Rod?
This is a Pixar movie to me. This felt like a Pixar movie. Yeah, it started off this is all ages and fun. Dudley is very likable. The central conceit at the beginning is how all inventors have a pet, a dog or a pet cat that loves them, that likes them. And it's an ongoing joke at different points in the opening issue where, this Daedalus dog or whatever doesn't like him, is barking at him all the time. His inventions all seem to go awry. We're led to believe that his invention at the beginning, he's sort of humiliated at the Young Inventor Society gala that he has because he's half naked on the stage. So something went wrong. So his inventions don't work as well as they should. Pets don't like him. So things aren't looking really well for him. Meanwhile, he's got a father who appears to be sick, and his father gets so sick his father can't even make it to his in his showing of his invention. And but there's so much fun to be had. He invents these smart clothes called duds, which consist of clear, flexible LCD threads. And so we know he's a really smart kid. We know that he's got a good relationship with his teacher, Dr. Shea. We know he's got a best friend. His best friend is called Ono, like Oh No. Like, it's kind of funny. And so it's there's fun to be had here. I even love the introduction of how we know it's going to be the bad guys, because really, right out of the blue, all of a sudden we get this goateed black man talking to a hooded figure, and you could tell it just has an eerie, evil feel. Like, it felt like a Pixar movie to me. Like, it just felt like, and it's not decompressed. It's fast paced. It gets to the heart of the matter. We get some good character work right away. We like Dudley. We want what's best for him. We even the talking dog at the end was. It brought the beginning of the story about dogs not liking him right to the end. And then to find out the dog's the narrator, just, this is exactly what you want in an opening issue of a comic book. It pulls you in because I mean, how can we not want to read the next issue? Because now all of a sudden, by the end of this first issue, boom, we're right in the middle of an adventure. And like you said, you're asking, what is the Forever Machine? And what does that have to do with the watch that Dr. Shea gave to him before she passed on? And these bad guys that are chasing him, what's going on? So a lot of fun. Like, again, a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying reviewing these. So this is 3 for 3, man. Wow.
Yeah, 100%. And we may have saved the best for last year as we talk about Canary. Again, written by Scott Snyder. This time he's collaborating with artist Dan Panosian, who, if you're a longtime listener to the podcast, you've heard Dan on the show before. We've had him on a couple times. I think the last time we had him on was to talk about Slots, which is his creator-owned book that he about a gambler that he both wrote and illustrated. That's absolutely fantastic. So much like Francis Manipul on Clear or Tula Lotay or Hayden Sherman, Dan is doing the art, line work and the colors. The letters in Canary are done by Richard Starking. So different time period here, as we talked about at the beginning, with all the diversity of these stories. So we're in the Utah Territory, 1891, so not even a state yet. And we hear the story about a man named Johnny Apple, who was, even though he was from kind of a rougher family, he was... Johnny was the one kind of good apple, they called him, even as a nickname. And he walks into this schoolhouse one day as this woman is talking about the United States forming and becoming part of the United States of America. And there's talk of Utah joining. And he walks up to the teacher, pulls out a straight razor, and just slits her throat. And it's completely out of character for this kid to have done this. And so we meet William Holt, who is a marshal, and he's talking to the town sheriff. And now the town sheriff actually has some authority, right? Like, he's an elected official or appointed official for the town. But technically, this U.S. Marshal, William Holt, whether he has jurisdiction, because, again, it's just a territory. The government of the United States has only given it territorial status, not statehood. So there's a question of, and again, typical Wild West story. Everybody's out there with guns and whatnot. It's not exactly how it was, not exactly 100% historically accurate, but it makes for a good story. So there's that aspect of it. And when Tell goes out to or Holt rather, when William Holt goes out to the Apple farm, he gets in a confrontation with the family, and we meet the boy. And the boy's mother, is talking about how there's something wrong with him, but we're going to handle it ourselves. And he hasn't been right for a long time, and there's a confrontation with the Apple family. And then as Holt checks in with his boss, we find out that there have been these sort of unexplained murders or attacks or whatever, these just seemingly innocent people, the last people in the world you would think would do something like this. Like an old woman locked a theater door and burned it down, killing everybody inside because she didn't like the play that was, that's like crazy stuff that happens nowadays with crazy people. So why are these seemingly innocent people, old women, little boys, out there murdering people? And so there's this theory that maybe it's something in the water in certain places, and his boss tells him he needs to go investigate it. But it happens to be at a place where where William Holt has some history, where he tracked down somebody named Hiram Tell previously, and something went horribly wrong when he tracked down this Hiram Tell. And the story of Holt taking down Hiram Tell is such a almost a legendary myth in the West that Holt himself is the subject of dime store novels about, you know, this heroic deed he did taking out Hiram Tell back in the day. And so we get a flashback of him confronting Tell, and it's clear that there's something not right with Tell as well. And so you can't help but wonder, are all of these other people who've committed these atrocities, are they infected with whatever infected Tell? It was Tell some kind of evil supernatural being? Like, there's got to be some connection there. But Holt definitely doesn't want anything to do with it. But his boss is like, I'm your boss. You got to do what I tell you. And think of it this way: you can go back up there, and whatever it is that happened between you and Tell that you're still carrying around, maybe you can face it and get some peace. So the area that he has to head to is has a mine called the Canary Mine, and it's abandoned for reasons, rumored to be haunted and whatnot. So again, does that have to do with this idea of, you know, supernatural? Did they unearth something? What could be going on there? So this is Old West, and it feels Old West, but it also feels creepy and supernatural with maybe some elements to get into some real horror, some real horrific things coming up. So I'm a big fan of Dan Panosian's art. He does a fantastic job with the colors, especially when we get the flashback to Hiram Tell. Everything is in blues and yellows, and the background is the yellow, and it really helps the blue pop off the page. So I think Dan Panosian is an artist that not enough people talk about how fantastic his work is. Like, the most people that I see talking about how great his work is are other creators. Like, everybody wants to work with him or get a cover from him or whatnot. I don't hear enough comic fans talking about Dan as really fantastic. He has such a visceral style, and granted, he came up in the 90s over at Image, and his style back then was wildly different than you see here. Much more like almost like a Liefeld clone. And so maybe people hear the name, Dan Panosian, and that's what they think of. But Dan kind of left comics for a little while, did some advertising, some storyboards for movies and whatnot, and has come back. And his style's much different now, much more his own, and it's really fantastic. He can tell these type of stories, westerns or slice of life or crime noir. Like, his style is very suited to that sort of gritty, visceral type story. And this story, based on the first issue, feels like it's a perfect match. Wouldn't surprise me if Scott had Dan in mind for this, like, right from the beginning. So I thought it was fantastic. What do you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I agree. I feel so fortunate. This is the second week in a row I've got to review a Western comic. The other one I reviewed was with Jim, on another indie review called Above Snakes, written by Sean Lewis, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed that, but this I enjoyed just quite a bit more because of the art here is just fantastic with Dan Panosian. And I won't add to the narrative that I won't repeat what you just said. You did a good overview, but I really like the symbolism here. I like that this Marshall William Holt. I like the fact that he's a no-nonsense kind of character. And you really got a sense that this guy believes in justice because, at the beginning, there's the symbolism of the egg, and the teacher that was killed was using the eggs to try to distinguish between statehood and talking about, different things. Just looking at an egg, you don't know what's inside an egg. It could be a snake. It could be a reptile of some kind. It could be a chicken. It could be a bird. You don't know by looking at eggs. And this kid that ended up, killing the teacher, he wants William Tell to bury this egg so that a monster will grow from it. But, this William Holt, his view of eggs is he cracks the eggs open and he eats the contents. He doesn't care what's in an egg. He has a job to do. And I really like the character. Marshall William Holt is no nonsense. And you got a sense that in the past, when he took down this Hiram Tell, that he got the job done. but it had an impact on him. And there's a horror element here that we know Scott Snyder is really good at. At least it suggested this Hiram Tell. How did he infect the water, and then the water out from these Canary mines infected the outlying towns where all these murders have taken place and maybe infected the mines. There's so many questions that we don't have answers to, but this. There's the perfect symbolism, and then I'll end there. The perfect symbolism on the last page is this eagle coming down, about to pick up this cracked egg, this empty egg. So William Holt never did bury the egg so that a monster would hatch, even though this young kid, he made a promise to that kid that he would do so. And, what does that mean? What does this mean? And again, I'm always looking for the metaphor, and Scott Snyder is always good at those hidden messages, as he's shown so often. So I'm loving this, because this is a Western. This could easily have turned into another Western trope, a revenge story, good guy versus bad, Marshall hunting of the bad guy. This is more to that. There's far more to this story. And I love the setting. I love the timing. Utah, pre-statehood, good stuff, entertaining stuff. 4 for 4, man. Scott Snyder, great job.
Yeah, I agree. And I hope more of that idea of statehood and jurisdiction and whatever. I hope more of that is interwoven into the story, because it's so interesting to me, kind of the push and pull, the political part of it, where, who's really got the authority and whatnot. So, yeah, I agree with you about Holt. He definitely seems like a no-nonsense guy. We were told that early on when he's talking to the sheriff, and the sheriff's got like a posse together to go with him, and he doesn't want any of them to go with him. And he's just very matter of fact with the sheriff, to the point where the sheriff at one point says, it's funny, Marshall, you ain't such a sumbitch in the dime store novels. And Holt says, yeah, that's why they're called fiction, Sheriff. Like, I just thought that's such a great line. Like, yeah. Basically, he's admitting, yeah, I am a son of a bitch. And if I come across nicer in the novels, well, yeah, those dime store novels are make believe. So that's it. I agree. 4 for 4. Boy, if I had to pick a favorite, I think for me, Barnstormers narrowly edges out Canary, but that could change after the next issue comes out. But they're all recommended. They're all worth reading. The range between what I think is maybe the best or my favorite one and what is my least is very small. I would be happy picking up any of these, and I would definitely be happy to recommend them to anybody. I don't think anybody that reads these would be disappointed in the quality, whether it's the different style of art or color or different narratives. I think they're all very much worth reading. So you have a favorite, Rocky? What would you give
I
your
do.
9?
I think I played my hand quite early. Barnstormers. I just love it. But again, they're all excellent. They're all excellent. And I've got full intentions whenever they make these. This is all digital, right? None of this is physical copies yet.
The Dark Spaces Wildfires is both digital and physical. Comes out from IDW. Okay. But the other 3 are ComiXology originals, which will come out on ComiXology first and then be in print at a later time, probably based on how long it's taking for the first wave. I would think that it would be 2023 before we saw any of the either Barnstormers or Dudley Datson or Canary. I would think it's probably next year, 2023, when they'll see print.
Yeah. Well, either way, I love Barnstormers. They're all good, and the great thing is that I've got plenty of time to plan and a budget to make sure I get them all. I would prefer to have them all in. I would love Barnstormers at Tula Lotay. I'm sorry, Tula Lotay art. I wish that was in a hardcover form. I would love that. That's my personal favorite. Second is Canary, because I'm a huge Western fan. I got a huge Jonah Hex collection, and I just love Panosian's art. He just absolutely nails it. So
yeah, I agree. I really hope they do something special for Barnstormers, like more than just a regular comic format. Like I need it bigger, at least like the like Black Label size, if not larger. Hardcover, preferably. Yeah. So I guess we'll see. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Hope you guys all enjoyed it. Don't forget, on Tuesdays, we also do our DC Spotlight episode, so that'll be out today as well. And then if you don't get a chance to go to San Diego Comic-Con, if you're not going to be there, follow Comic Source on social media. I'll be live tweeting throughout the show and putting up pictures on my social media threads and whatnot, and doing lots of interviews at the shows. I'm not sure if I have time. I'll be posting some episodes while I'm at the show. Might not be till the following week. because honestly, I've overcommitted myself to interviews and different obligations. But definitely give us a follow, and you'll be able to follow along. And then, of course, I'll do an episode breaking down the whole convention. I might record it in the car on my long drive home late Sunday night when I'm trying to stay awake. We'll have to wait and see for that. So anything you want to plug? You have anything else coming up this week, Rocky?
Yeah, I do. Coming out Wednesdays. Well, first of all, obviously, I review DC with you every week, and we're going to be reviewing the Scott Snyder's ongoing series here. I'm starting to review other random independent comic books with Jim Warner of Word Science DC. That comes out every Wednesday. And I read my first manga comic, Chainsaw Man, last week. Reviewed that. It was surprisingly entertaining. I was very impressed. So God forbid I haven't bought a manga yet, but who knows? But so far digitally, it's been entertaining. But no, it's fun. So if people want, other than usually it's just DC on my site, but it's nice to branch out with yourself and others to broaden my horizons a bit.
Yeah, fantastic. So that's going to do it, everybody. Make sure you follow Rocky's channel on YouTube so you don't miss any of that content. Comic Space Boom, ! Like the video, ring the notification bell, leave some comments. You guys know what to do. Conversely, if you always check us out on YouTube and you're curious about the other content from the Comic Source, just go to wherever you get your podcast and do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. So that's going to do it for this episode. We appreciate you all joining as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.
Thank you.